recently I tried a bit of a new method for taking notes on nonfiction books, and it worked really well. So today you get to hear about it. As a disclaimer, personal knowledge management is a topic that's still pretty new to me, so I'm kind of a noob in this area and still figuring out how I want to do it. So this video is not meant to be like, this is the best way to take notes on nonfiction books and this is exactly the steps that you should follow. I hope that this video is sort of a jumping off point for discussions, and I also want to learn from you, from the comments, what your favorite note-taking methods are. So this is just something that I've tried, but I'm still working on and developing, so feel free to critique it. So the reason that I came up with this method was when I was writing the script and doing research for my recent life admin video, I read this book called Life Admin by Elizabeth Emmons, and because I wanted to make that video script really good and really helpful, I read that book in a more focused and active way than I think I've ever read a book before, like not even for school. And so what I came up with was this 3-step process that I am now going to share with you. But first, I have a very exciting announcement, and please don't skip past this because this is actually really exciting. For a while now, I've been working on a big project that I would tease occasionally. For example, sometimes on my Instagram stories, I would post a photo of my iCal and there'd be an event on the calendar that said like work on blank, which is blank is that big project, but no one would notice, and so I think my teasers were too subtle. So basically for the past few months I have been doing a bunch of stuff. I've been interviewing people like the CEO and founder of a mobile app, mental health counselors, YouTubers in the personal development space. I've gotten to interview and talk to a bunch of Blissbean readers and viewers, which has been so lovely. I have been writing, rewriting, photographing, and just having the worst imposter syndrome of my life basically, and I couldn't tell you about any of these feelings and emotions that I was experiencing because I couldn't tell you that this project was happening. But now I can finally share with you that I am publishing a book, and you can pre-order it now. It is called Plan and Organize Your Life. When Mango Publishing reached out to me about this, we brainstormed a couple of different ideas for a book, but what I decided I wanted to create was like a complete guide, almost like a little handbook that you could have on the desk next to you when you're being productive and getting things done, like a little reference manual to getting organized and getting things done. So there's 4 parts to it. It's divided into planning, organization, productivity, habits, and routines. So these are all of the techniques that I've used in my own life to get things done efficiently and balance the different passions of my life. Right now, I'm just working on YouTube for the time being, but as you might know, when I started the Blissbean, I was balancing high school and extracurriculars and running a photography business and doing the YouTube channel, and so I needed some serious planning and organization skills to manage all of that, and that is exactly what I've tried to describe in detail in this book. So you can pre-order the book on Amazon, on Bookshop, a bunch of different book retailers. All of the links that you need are in the description. You should follow me on Instagram to stay tuned about updates and also learn about the pre-order gifts that I've prepared for you if you do pre-order the book, which if you do, I so appreciate you. Thank you for your support. But literally everyone, even if you don't order the book, thank you so much for watching my channel, supporting me all these years. I would not have this opportunity. I would not have like any of the opportunities that I have these days if it weren't for you. So the book is dedicated to you. Once you get it, you can flip open to that page and see that dedication written out to you. So I really hope you love it and that you find it helpful. Okay, let's move on to step 1 of my book note-taking process. Alrighty, let's open up Kindle. So the very first thing that I did was I did a quick read. I just read through it one time, I made highlights, and I made quick notes of any thoughts that popped into my head. I do like using my actual Kindle for reading fiction books or like entertainment non-fiction books, but when it comes to personal development books or anything that I want to take more notes on, the Kindle computer app is great because I can type notes a lot faster than I can on this, and I can also highlight in different colors. So I like to use the blue highlights for vocabulary and then yellow highlights for any important passages. Even though this is just the first quick read, I feel like it's really important to still read in a very active way, so I like to compare it to having a conversation with someone. If you were talking to someone, you would be bringing up personal anecdotes and making random connections to other things you've read. You would not just be sitting there like, yeah, yep, sounds good, I agree with that. Do you have anything to add? No, what you said was perfect. So try to be thinking about what personal stories can you write down, connections to other books. If something makes you go, huh? Or if you disagree with something, or if it doesn't fit something that you read before, make a note of that. So for example, when I was reading this life admin book, wait, not this book, sorry, it was a book called How to Take Smart Notes. Okay, so there was a passage that said more people in a brainstorming group usually come up with less good ideas and restrict themselves inadvertently to a narrower range of topics. And the note that I wrote down, because I was like, I find this hard to believe because tangents that another person brings up triggered new ideas in me that I might not have otherwise thought of. So that's something that I might need to do some more thinking about. For the time being, I just make a note of that. And in the future, maybe I will agree with the author said here, but for the time being, there's like a discrepancy. And that's important as you're interacting with the text. Step 2, the next thing I did, and I think I did this the next day because I made sure to have at least a day in between each of these steps so that the information had time to like simmer and stew in my head. I love cooking metaphors for talking about learning. So what I did was I reviewed all of the highlights and notes that I took, and I deleted any highlights that I decided actually were not that helpful because I'd rather have a few really high quality highlights than just a bunch of crap. And there were also some highlights where multiple highlights said basically the same thing, so I just deleted any that were redundant. As I was doing that, I was also typing and condensing my notes into bullet point notes in Obsidian. So this is an app that I've been using lately. This is also something that I'm still trying to learn. Obsidian is similar to Roam Research, if you've heard of that. There's basically an edit mode where you type in markdown language, and then when you preview it, it shows the way that you would probably see it in any regular note-taking app. The really cool thing about this is that you have bi-directional links, and so basically what that means is if you put double brackets around a word or a section of text, you can create a link to a different note. So for example, as I was reading Life Admin, I was reminded of this article that I read called How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation. And so I made a note just for that. Maybe someday I'll be reading a different book and it'll also remind me of this article, or a podcast will remind me of this article. And so basically the idea is to be making all of these different connections between the stuff that you're consuming. So anyways, as I am reviewing my highlights and my notes, I'm taking bullet point notes. And one of the things that the book How to Take Smart Notes really drills into your head is that you have to take your notes in your own words in order to test your understanding. So because of I think it was the mirror exposure effect, if I remember correctly, the more times you look at something, the more familiar you become with it. So if you go back and you read through a chapter a couple of times, it's gonna feel very familiar to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you understand it. So your brain might be tricking you, being like, oh yeah, this all looks familiar, I've seen this before, I understand this. But when it comes time to actually explain that concept to someone else in your own words, then it might not be as easy. So by taking your notes and trying to explain things in your own words rather than just copying in direct quotes, you're already kind of translating it for your own brain, if that makes sense. One thing to point out is that with this book, Life Admin specifically, the way that the author organized the chapters didn't really make sense to me, and so when I was taking my notes, I actually wrote down my own categories of headers. So for example, one of my categories was that admin should be actively addressed in a relationship. I thought that was a main point that the author made. However, these bullet point notes were kind of scattered throughout the book, and it made more sense to me to just gather them under one heading rather than trying to format my notes the same way that the author formatted the book. I'm not sure if I'll do this for books in the future, but I think it is a nice way to personalize your notes. Step 3 was the big new important thing because I have taken book notes in the past, but in the past I would only do bullet point notes. This time I actually wanted to write a summary in prose. So sort of like an essay or a book review, except unlike an essay or a book review, no one actually has to see this. So this was a summary that I wrote. I definitely left out some of the bullet point notes because they weren't that important. I think in the future, if I ever want to review the general concept of this book, the summary will be the easiest thing to read because it's It's natural language, it's the shortest version of my notes. It's a really good, like, dense piece of information that is personalized to what the book meant to me personally. So again, I do think it's important that I did each of these 3 steps on different days. I think part of it is that I just get tired, so the day that I finish a book, I'm not really in the mood. I don't have the energy to also start thinking deeply about it and writing notes. But I think the second and the bigger benefit is that every time you come back to your highlights and your notes and whatever, you come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. It almost feels like someone else wrote it, and so you have a more objective view of it, and you can decide, are these notes that I took actually important? Why did I decide to highlight that, etc. So I showed you that I read on the Kindle Paperwhite. I also read on the Kindle computer app, and I've been using Obsidian for notes. In the past, I used to use Google Drive for my book notes, and then I used Apple Notes because I just found that easier to navigate. And now the reason I'm using Obsidian is because I started reading this book. The book is called How to Take Smart Notes, and it talks about the Zettelkasten method, which is a concept where, let's see if I understood the book well enough to explain this concept. Basically, from the stuff that you read and consume, you take permanent notes and you put them into something called a slip box. So every idea that you have is contained in one single note, and then you make connections between notes, sort of like a brain. So rather than setting up your entire folder structure in advance and having like a folder for each topic that you read about and then subfolders and subfolders, you kind of let the structure form and evolve naturally based on the stuff that you're thinking about and the new interests that you're pursuing and the new stuff that you're reading. So I'm currently trying to wrap my head around that and learn that. One tool that I hear a lot about that I still haven't tried, Ali Abdaal mentioned it in one of his videos. It's called Readwise. I believe it takes all of the highlights that you've ever made on Kindle, and then it sends you 5 random highlights as an email to your inbox every day, kind of as a way to review books that you might have read a long time ago and just keep reminding yourself of the stuff that you highlighted as being important. Personally, I feel like I would just stop opening those emails the way that I stop opening some newsletters. So for the time being, I'm trying to just focus on writing really good book summaries, but if you had a good experience with Readwise, let me know, because maybe I should give it a try. Otherwise, that is basically all that I wanted to share with you today. So if you're subscribed to my newsletter, which you totally should be, the link is in the description. I sent out a newsletter a couple of weeks ago where I shared this summary, the entire thing that I wrote for the Life Admin book. Don't worry if you weren't subscribed to it at the time. Whenever you subscribe to the newsletter, you get access to the whole newsletter archive, and so you'll find that edition just a couple of weeks back. Please let me know in the comments what your methods for taking notes on books are. Please also pre-order my book, that would mean so much to me. But again, even if you don't, I really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching this video. Please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. See you next week. Bye!